Namaste. There is an interesting movement going on. I, Several interesting movements are going on because it's a time of the great churning. By great churning, I mean when old and new ideas are brought together, shredded, put into a mixer grinder of the divine, of the human mind, so that something new may emerge. And this happens when certain fixed ways of life they begin to lose their significance, largely because the spirit in them have escaped and the form or the outer shell has been corrupted. This is what happens. So it applies to political systems, it applies to religions, it applies to ideologies. The spirit that gave birth escapes because human beings, being what they are, in their application, they bring in their own limitations, their own consciousness, their own selfishness. And therefore, the result is what we see today, a chaos based on the very things which are meant to give order and make human life beautiful. There is nothing which is more striking today as an example than religions. So, religions were meant to not only give hope but to help man lead a life which is beautiful, to help his aspiration, support his upward aspiration, in some way give him a glimpse of the beyond. That's what religions were meant to do. Almost all religions also give a law, a way of life, which man must live to make his own individual existence and the collective existence better. But it's been more and more being recognized, not only by rationalistic thought, but even otherwise, that religions are beginning to lose the purpose for which they came into existence. Not only that, they are becoming a cause or a source of evil. That's what is the strange part. And so there is a churning going on, a thought is going on where people are trying to find a way out. One such way is interfaith dialogues. Let's try and have an understanding of religions. This is deeply flawed, and it's flawed for several reasons. One, in every religion, I am taking the best case scenario where people are genuine. They really want an interfaith dialogue to help understand. I'm speaking of that. But what happens in the interfaith dialogues? Who are the people who go? Those who somewhere have a kind of wideness in the best case scenario, who do understand that yes, my religion is not the only one, who understand that there are different approaches to the divine. And frankly, if a human being understands it, or if religions understand it, then there is no need of an interfaith dialogue. So it's a paradox. Why do we have interfaith dialogues? It's because we believe either my religion is superior, or worse still, my religion is exclusive, the only one. And still worse, where all other religions have to be either exterminated or converted in some way, or they have to be challenged and opposed. So, if such be the mindset, then interfaith dialogues to try to understand. But the problem of this interfaith dialogue is, first of all, the people who come there are already those who have some kind of wideness. And secondly, they are not the representatives of the community. An average Muslim or an average Hindu or an average Christian, even if there is a kind of wideness in some of them, but the people who go and speak there do not represent the thinking of the masses who hold on to a religion, and certainly not to the organized, labeled, in every religion, some of the religions, not every religion. Again and again I say, Hinduism has sort of escaped this because there is no one organized institution. There are several institutions. You have Sri Ramakrishna Ashram, you have Sri Aurobindo Ashram, you have Vedanta Ashram, you have Tantra Sadhana Pitham, and that's because each is their own path and they have their own institution. But in strictly organized religions, which are institutionalized, the problem starts. Why? Because they have their own official representatives. And these official representatives do not come to interfaith dialogues, or if they come, the whole idea is to convert others to their own hardcore belief. It's like to a group of people you are trying to prove a point, and these people go back, yes, yes, this is the highest. So it's flawed because human intent is flawed. So what can be done? Is there an alternative? Yes, the alternative is that man has to go beyond religion. Religion is like a finger. It's a finger pointing toward the beyond, that there is something or someone, a power, a being, a consciousness. And through the religious approaches where the heart worships that. But there is a difference between worshipping and becoming, contacting, knowing, and living. So religions stop with worship, and then worship tends to become mechanical over a period of time. Any kind of worship. Not that worship is bad. Worship is all right. As a beginner, you start worshipping. But slowly over a period of time, it becomes a mechanical act. And slowly it becomes an act which is enforced upon others. So worship as an act becomes more important than its essence. The essence of worship is to accept, acknowledge with humility that there is a higher deity, a higher being, a higher consciousness. Impersonal, personal, superpersonal is a different thing. And in some way, man submits to that. But after some time, the acts which are supposed to indicate worship, it may be kneeling down on the floor, it may be, bowing down in whatever way, different ways, human being. That act becomes much more important. The actual spirit of submission goes away. And when that happens, and that too when it is enforced by a common code, and through the Pope or the Pandit or the Mullah or the Qazi or whoever, in every religion there are. Now we see Sikh religion is also entered into that category, unfortunately. Then religion has completely lost its truth. It has become an empty shell. And this empty shell becomes very dangerous because it has been the seat of power. And that gets occupied by all kinds of ambitious political elements which use it to tyrannize others. So we have to understand that every person who says I am a Hindu is not necessarily a Hindu. Every person who says he is a Muslim or is a Muslim by birth is not necessarily a Muslim. Most are not. Most are just regular human beings who are conforming to a faith, and if they belong to the masses, they are driven by the law of the masses. They are taught, it's indoctrinated. There is the big man in that particular group, let us say X group, and the head of that X group, the head priest, if he says something, they unquestioningly follow. So the problem of organized religion is that you are not allowed to question. And I can point out, Hinduism again escaped it because we are allowed to question. We can question. Hindus are allowed to question. And they can even discard whatever the Pandit or whoever is saying. As a 7-year-old, I used to question. And it was acceptable norm. It was not like, why are you questioning? One day the Pandit had got annoyed that why is he questioning so much? But he couldn't issue a diktat on me because it's part of Hindu culture. Gargi, woman questions, Yagnavalk, Maitreyi questions. We used to have those sabhas where people question. And this questioning was inspired by the spirit of seeking. What it meant was that your diktat is not enough, you must give me the rational. The rational is not necessarily the human rational limited to the senses. There are supra-sensible rationals. For instance, I must submit to the will of God. How do I recognize the will of God? Is it in a book, once forever, or is that will manifesting in me? Because will cannot be something rigid. God doesn't act like a rigid will once he has told and it's for all times. That will itself, as human beings evolve, it's like what is applicable to a child of 5 cannot be applicable to a boy of 15, cannot be applicable to a man of 25, cannot be applicable to one who is 45, and certainly changes when one is 65. So, because Hinduism recognized this kind of aspects, even though it tried to formalize that as different kinds of dharma, but still it recognized ultimately that the will of God is within you and you have to contact it and live by that. So, will of God, submitting to the will of God is something so beautiful. It is the highest truth. But see what happens in a religion. There is a man who embodies the will of God, who based on the scripture, reading of the scripture, He said, this is what the will is. This is what God is saying. Understood, misunderstood, and the masses follow. If you don't follow, you become a heretic. You can be killed, you can be expugned. So all this has happened in religion, and I don't need to elaborate, and this is dangerous. And by no means I'm suggesting that in their origin they must have been very great. Each religion must have been great in its own context, time, place, people. The founder must have been great. But over a period of time, it begins to lose its power because the spiritual impulse which fired it, like a live breath. It's like when a person is dead, but not dead because he is on artificial respiration or ventilator. So, most religions nowadays are on ventilators. And they are struggling. How to come out of that impasse? Is the only way is that, or the real valid way is that religion must recognize that what gave birth to them is a spiritual impulse. And discover that spiritual impulse, meaning thereby go beyond religions. Go beyond mere worship to knowing. Go beyond knowing to living. Go beyond living to becoming. Go beyond becoming to becoming one with the being. That's how we have in India the yoga and the spiritual life preserved. And if a religion is unable to do it for whatever reasons, either because its mind is stuck in a certain groove, because it is living in the past rather than looking to the future, or even the present in the heart within, then it is foredoomed to failure. And that's what we see happening today. That's what the mother meant when she said the age of religions is over. So instead of ventilating religions or putting them on artificial ventilatory systems, it is much better if within religions there are individuals who can grow into the spiritual consciousness, and then they can point out within the religion, this is what it means. But that is only possible if the yoga is kept intact. If the yoga is lost, then it's near impossible to recover it. And people who recover the yoga for by some means, they could be in any religion, then they don't care. They know that it is an empty shell. They don't bother about it. So this is the situation as of today. And if we put it in perspective, I would say that, as Shubindu said, religion, philosophy, occultism and spiritual experiences, they have been only through a door or a window, they are giving a glimpse of what is beyond. But they don't have the key to open the door. That key is with spirituality, that key is with yoga, that key is with man's aspiration. So instead of trying to revive these religions, bringing them together, saying inanity is basically that, this is same and everything is same, instead of saying all that, let us recognize, realize what is that one of which they are saying. Rather than saying, even when we say Ishwar Allah Tero Naam, well, he has 1,000 names. Why only 2 names, 3 names? Million names, and he is beyond all names to the nameless. So the only way religions can survive, if at all they will, is by reviving the yoga, catching hold of the occult spiritual impulse, if at all it is still there. Throw away the tyrant that are sitting on the thrones of religions and occupying it, and in the name of religion doing what they are doing. Who will bring that change? It has to come from within the group. Nobody else can do it. If a group has to change, the voice must be from within the group. And if people cannot, they are not ready, they are not courageous, they are not seekers, because seeking is stifled. Very often religion stifles the seeking because it makes you live in an illusion that all the answers are there in a particular book. No book. Bible, Gita, Quran, Ramayana, Mahabharata, any book. No book alone can have all the answers. That's why one of the beautiful things I find about the Gita, at least, it says go beyond the Shabda Brahma. Go beyond the scripture. And even one of the Upanishads says, it says the 3 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda and Sam, it is the object of the lower knowledge. It's so surprising. When I had read it, I was, Mundak Upanishad. And says, because why? Because scriptural reading, it's not saying that Veda is something, but the experience is the real thing. But reading a scripture and believing that you know, so that's why, as I said, and I say again and again, within Hinduism, there is enough corrective impulse. Because always it believes that the realized person is above the priest or the, the temple manager or the institution, whatever it be. It's the realized person who is more important, much more important. So religions must enter into that phase, and if they don't, the spirit of time is going to finish it off, throw it by the wayside, as has happened to several religions in the past, some of whom we remember their names. There was the Nordic religion. There was religion in the desert of Arabia before Islam came. They were the roots, not that all of them were bad or good. There were the Egyptian religion where they followed all these gods, Anubis and Isis, and very interesting names. Horus, Ra. Even in India, religion had taken a form of doing that yagna with the fire ritual and all that. Sandhya Vandan, all those forms have gone. But in India, the spirit kept alive, so it took that new form. But otherwise, several religions in the past, these are some of the ones we know. We don't know many others, what it must have been. It was a gift of God so that man can open a window glimpse into the infinite. But when its time was over, it's gone. So you must understand all religions come with an expiry date. What does not have an expiry date is the spiritual impulse and the spiritual realization. So all that I can say is that either graduate or postgraduate out of religion into the spiritual, or else know that the spirit of time is going to slay and it will pass away. It will find its own ways and mechanisms to do it. Because nature and God are far more powerful than men and the institutions they build around thoughts that are dead. They worship the corpse and they deny the ever living realities. Thank you.